Hi, this is Adam with some clips from the Battlefield 1 beta that was up for the last week. I'm a big fan of the Battlefield series. Bad Company 2 was one of my favorite games I played online ever, probably. And 3 and 4 I didn't enjoy quite as much, but I still played an unhealthy amount of 3 and a fair amount of 4 before I got tired of it. I wasn't super excited about the World War I setting for this one, but after playing the beta, I'm a little more in anticipation of this game. My favorite part, coming up right here, horses. The cavalry is really fun to use. The sword was my favorite. The rifle's pretty fun too, but there's nothing more satisfying than running by and killing somebody at high speed. However, the horse will need to be tweaked a little bit, hopefully before release, because sometimes the hitbox can be a little wonky on the sword. And as you'll see here, this starts out with some clean kills, but I go on a bit of a horse rampage that shouldn't have worked as well as it did, as you'll start to see my sword swipes get further and further away from the enemies that I am killing. The horses can leap over pretty much most of the walls and chunks of rock that are about as high as a person, so their mobility is pretty ridiculous. Also, they're a little too strong. Here I just hit one with an anti-tank shell and it did 25 damage to it, which is kind of ridiculous. These bayonet dashes are really satisfying. You press in the melee button while you're running, and you just go flying after somebody. They're not really overpowered, I don't think, though, because you do have to point them in the right direction, or else you're just going to run by somebody and get shot. The only reason that worked is because I predicted exactly what corner he was going to be in and ran around holding right as hard as I could to hope that worked, and it did. But there have been plenty of times where I've overshot somebody by a foot or so and they just look at me like an idiot and shoot me or melee me, so I don't think they're really overpowered. Also enjoyable are those execution melee animations that you get if you sneak up behind somebody with the shovel or the club or other stuff like that. The destruction seems to be a lot more on par with Bad Company 2, which I'm definitely enjoying. I liked the larger levels and the city levels in Battlefield 3 and 4, but the lack of destruction, especially in 3 on the PS3, was really disappointing to me. So being able to collapse or at least take chunks out of most of the buildings in the level that we've played so far really brought back fond memories of Bad Company 2 and just insane amounts of destruction. You'll see here too, you can even crater the ground with your explosions pretty well. So this tank goes bye-bye. The tanks are pretty strong. I don't know if they need to nerf the armor on them a little or if we just need better team tactics, but when you're trying to use the anti-tank shells, they only do about 15 or 20 damage, it seems like. And tanks can all repair themselves as long as they can sit still for a second, so if you don't have somebody else hitting them, or a sniper using K rounds to stop them from being able to repair, then it can be pretty frustrating shooting every rocket you have at somebody and still seeing them rolling along with no problem. But I, once again, don't know if that's going to work better once people know the game better. The heavy tanks and the light tanks both seem pretty strong. The light tank especially is extremely maneuverable and a smaller target, so that one's definitely difficult to take out. Another thing that I enjoyed is the lack of sights and scopes on most of the weaponry. Pretty much only the sniper rifles have any kind of scope on them, but there is kind of a improvised red dot sight on one of the submachine guns I used for a while. But this was an aspect I really enjoyed in Bad Company 2 Vietnam expansion, because in the Vietnam expansion you lost all the scopes and everything that everybody had been abusing in Bad Company 2, so I didn't have to worry about getting sniped from across the map with submachine guns anymore. So I'm definitely happy to go back to that system, especially after how ridiculous the sights got in Battlefield 3 and 4. Another change that I don't know how I feel about is Conquest mode. So what you're seeing right now is me getting revived. Somebody actually took my kit and revived me, and I got killed again immediately. But I put that in here because that is the only time I was revived during about 8 hours of playing this game. And, you know, that happens in regular Battlefield games previously too, when people aren't working as a team or playing their class correctly. But in this case, it really seemed to be a ridiculous amount of medics either ignoring me or just not having any of them around. I think it's because of how Conquest mode works now, because you gain points for holding objectives instead of losing tickets when people die and bleeding more tickets the more objectives the enemies hold. So revives no longer help your points at all for Conquest. You know, you still get experience points for them and points in the match, but it's not really helping your team too much unless you're trying to take an objective and somebody revives you to help you, you know, take over the objective. So I guess it was probably done to try and reduce lone snipers, because now their kills don't really count towards the game. So you can't just sit back and pop people for, you know, not near the objective and at least say you're taking kills off the other team for your team. But I don't know that that helped that much. I still saw a lot of snipers hanging out in the middle of nowhere and not shooting at objectives. And I've played 3 Battlefield games before this, and all I can say is snipers gonna snipe no matter what you do to try and stop it. There's always going to be people who just ignore the team play and the objectives and do nothing but snipe the entire time. So I understand where they were coming from, changing the ticket system to the point system, but I think they've created a new problem where medics are kind of useless in Conquest mode and didn't solve the problem of snipers. Another problem they didn't solve, as you just saw, was the vaulting still acts kind of spacey sometimes. Here I'm about to get caught in this wall for reasons I don't really understand, and then I tried to hit my pause button and things got real weird and slow there. I decided just to see what was happening, and I'm trying to move back and forth. I'm trying to jump. When I crouch, I go through the ground. So this is a beta. This kind of stuff could be cleaned up or at least reduced in the final release, hopefully. But these are problems that have existed with the Frostbite engine for a while with the Battlefield series, and I don't know how much they're really going to be able to do to fix that. Coming up here, you'll see another example of the terrain kind of getting in the way of the gameplay. I was trying to chase this guy down and take him out after I hit him with the first rocket. So I see him coming around the corner here, and oh, stuck. And I'm not too good to avoid a kill, so it's cheesy, but I still took it. But you know, this is the kind of stuff that it would be nice if they could fix things like that, especially when you're just trying to vault over a foot or two when you get stuck. Another problem, those craters that get created sometimes seem to have their own center of gravity or just be impossible to maneuver out of, which is how I ended up trying to Austin Powers it out of this crater for about 30 seconds. I'm holding accelerate and nothing's happening. I'm holding reverse and nothing's happening. I'm trying to turn while I do those things. And I'm just kind of spinning around doing donuts here. So we'll see with the final game if any of this stuff is cleaned up a little, or if these are just things that we're always going to have to deal with in Battlefield games. Another thing that's always fun in Battlefield games, 1 second lives, as you'll see me spawn in and die here again and again. Some of these are my fault for spawning into vehicles, but the spawns are not great on the objectives either. Frequently they'll put you out too far away from the objective in the open where you can get sniped. Vehicles disappearing. This is one I hadn't really encountered in previous games in the Battlefield series, so I'm hoping this is just the beta. That truck just disappeared on me completely, and it happened again here. It didn't fall off the cliff, just disappeared from around me. No clue what's happening there. And then this is very fitting. This was the first minute I played the beta. First thing I did, jump in, trying to figure out the buttons here, so I put on my gas mask by accident, chasing after this guy, hoping he'll give me a ride, trying to hit the call button to ask for a ride, not that people don't ignore that, but as you can see, he just drove away, and then I'm going to try and get in this truck, which is stuck, and there is nothing really to be done at this point, just run to the next objective. So there's the worst